There is a generous number of apostles we see in the story of Berserk, and by virtue of that, they can differ a lot from one another. We can have small ones that, though are strong in their own right, are nowhere near the level of apostles like Nosferatu's Zod or Locus. The series also has pseudo-apostles like Mosgus and Zondark, humans who were transformed by other apostles. And just like humans, apostles also have personalities. Some have a constant hunger, while others have a strategic brain and are willing to disregard their bloodthirst if the situation calls for it. However, there is one principle that unites all apostles. They are loyal to the God Hand. But what happens when you get an apostle that subverts this expectation while also being exceptionally powerful? That's when this video's character of discussion comes into play, the Kushan Emperor, Ganishka, an egomaniac who lusts for power so intensely he's willing to be the ruler of the ashes if it means he doesn't have to look up to anyone. He's a central figure behind the Kushan invasion, aiming to extend his territory under his control to every single inch of the world. He is cruel and tyrannical, bringing monsters and astral horrors to the battlefield. Some of these horrors include the Daka and Pishaka, whose only function is to kill the enemies of Ganishka. The Emperor also has powerful allies, such as Deba, a Kushan sorcerer who holds a significant role as the Pishaka Gana leader, able to summon mystical creatures such as Kundalini. His powers are similar to Ganishka's, though to a lesser degree. The Kushan Emperor, I would say, is the most powerful apostle we have seen in Berserk. He serves as a good opposition to Griffith as they both share similar ambitions, viewing themselves as godly beings above those of the God Hand. And it was good to see Griffith fight someone his own size. Well, kinda, because, Griffith is part of the God Hand, so there really isn't much competition. However, it does showcase the power that Griffith holds in his battle against Ganishka. He can oppose an emperor who just so happens to be an apostle and is capable of destroying the whole world. But also politically, Griffith is competing with him as he holds the title of emperor. And when Ganishka perishes, the people of the world, of course, see Griffith as the true savior. But let's rewind and go through the story of Ganishka and discuss his character and relation to the plot. His first appearance is in volume 27, during the Falcon of the Millennium Empire arc. We see that Windham is no longer what it once was, now a demon city occupied by the Kushan, where dead bodies are impaled upon building structures that crows flock to. The streets, the church, the plazas, every place you go in Windham, you will find corpses. Inside Windham's castle, the Bakuraka clan kneel before the leader of the Kushan, who sits on a throne built into the lap of a statue of a woman with many arms. The imposing looking man on the throne, Emperor Ganishka, scolds the clan for not having been able to carry out the mission of capturing Griffith. Ganishka orders them to report Griffith's location, but to leave the job of apprehending him to his army. When the Bakuraka clan leave, Silat comments that the Kushan Emperor is indeed the Dread Emperor. Later, Ganishka makes his way to the Tower of Rebirth, where Princess Charlotte is held. He orders Anna, Charlotte's handmaiden, to be removed from the room. Then he asks the princess if she is prepared, and she is like, "Prepared for what?"
"Prepared to bear my child."
Hey yo, what the fuck?
The girl becomes uncomfortable at the idea. The man then begins guilt-tripping Charlotte by saying that her refusal is actively ensuring that the war between the Kushan Empire and Midland continues. He grabs the princess, towering over her, telling her that he has given her ample time to prepare for this day. Now he will use force. He pushes her onto the bed, about to do the unthinkable. The princess has a trauma response to her repulsive father's actions, which the Kushan Emperor is now mirroring. She screams out for Griffith, which stops Ganishka. He notices that all the embroideries that she had made were of the hawk. She is Griffith's lover. He makes the connection and exits the room. As Ganishka is escorted back to Windham's castle throne room, he reflects on how the appearance of the hawk signifies the transfiguration of the world. He then ponders the relationship between apostles and the hawk, how it is like serving a god. However, Ganishka, as Emperor of the Kushan Empire, thinks himself the owner of the world itself. With fury in his eyes, he says he will rebel against God. Well, that is certainly a high opinion of yourself, sir. When the band of the Hawk infiltrate Windham to assassinate Ganishka, the Emperor shows little to no concern, as he thinks the band of the Hawk will fail in their mission. A force of Kushan archers fire a volley of arrows down on Locus's horsemen. Most of the arrows are knocked out of the air by Locus himself, who twirls his spear in the air to block them. The Kushan archers are killed when Irvine, with his own force of archers, on a distant rooftop, unleashes his own volley of arrows upon him. Locus and his horsemen easily charge through the barrier of Kushan pikemen. Ganishka is aware that the attacking band members are all apostles, and so decides to unleash a foe upon them that will be more effective than the regular human Kushan soldiers. the Daka. Locus and his cavalrymen charge their way into Windham, eventually coming across the Daka in front of the castle. Humanoid creatures with horns on their head and sharp protruding teeth. Ganishka stands on one of the castle's balconies, announcing to Locus that the Daka are powerful. Locus decides to ask Ganishka a question, not as a man, but as an apostle. He asks why Ganishka opposes the master, that being Griffith. Ganishka instantly becomes angry at this question. He is the most powerful being on the planet, who has conquered vast amounts of land, not the Hawk. Ganishka's ultimate goal is to prove that he is more powerful than God. He don't want to look up at anyone. Locus's reaction is like, alright man, I mean you chose this path, and he begins a charge. Next we see Silat and the Tapasa come across something unsettling in the temple's main chamber. We see a bunch of what seems to be flesh suspended in the air by a bunch of chains, and there are these weird looking sack things above them that seem to be feeding the mass down below. But that's not all, as there is a woman who is lowered into some weird hole with liquid inside. She screams as her stomach rips open, and presumably she just gave birth to an inhuman baby with horns and sharp teeth. The guards nearby seize the demonic looking baby and place it in another cage that has many more of the same looking beings. Next to the cage we see more dead women. This process is happening often. Rakshas explains what is going on to the Bakiraka. He says they're using apostles to birth demons. Being apostles, the mass of flesh is inherently linked to the astral world. When pregnant women are fed to the mass of flesh, their babies are corrupted by evil, creating demon children. Rakshas leaves the scene, but not before telling the Bakiraka that their emperor is a demon king and not a man. Silat is shocked and he is determined to figure out what the hell his emperor is up to. Outside the castle, Locus transforms into his metallic horse-looking form. He tells Ganishka that his Daka do not stand a chance against the apostles. Ganishka then orders several Pishakas to enter the battle along with swarms of what remain of the Daka. A demon dinner party, the emperor says excitedly. Silat comes to the scene and remarks about the hellish image, a demon king. Ganishka is impressed with the power of the Band of the Hawk, but he thinks it will be inevitable for them to fail. Just then, Irvine shoots an arrow at the Emperor, but is shocked to see the arrow pass through Ganishka as if he were a ghost. Then Ganishka's giant face appears behind Irvine, and he releases a burst of fire, destroying the structure. Ganishka's face rises into the air as a giant fog body forms below it. He aims several of the apostles on the ground and unleashes lightning on them, killing them instantly. He demands that the surviving apostles stand down. Locus literally says,
Are you sure about that?
Meanwhile, in the Tower of Rebirth where the princess is, Griffith appears. Oh great. On the ground, Locus orders the apostles to withdraw from the battle. Ganishka questions why the strong apostles have chosen to retreat. He then turns to the Tower of Rebirth and makes his way over to it. Once close enough, he notices that the section of the roof that covered Charlotte's room has been completely removed, and that Charlotte is nowhere to be seen. The apostle attack, he realizes, was a diversion. Outsmarted by Griffith, he had been. We do not see Ganishka for some time. The next time he appears, a bunch of nobles gather in a ballroom when Pishaka bursts through the windows, causing havoc by destroying everything in its way and feeding on the humans inside the building. Guts does what he does best and decimates the demonic tigers. After the Pishaka are eliminated, Lord Van Diemen concludes that the Kushan army plan to strike at the heads of the Holy See domain and throw their allied army into confusion by drugging the wine and making them see these horrid illusions. But just then, fog floods the scene and Ganishka's cloud-like face appears. Guts immediately catches on that it's an apostle. The Emperor mocks Lord Van Diemen's claim that it was an illusion and officially declares war on the Holy See and all other nations. Ganishka leaves. Guts theorizes that because he is an apostle, that must mean he is under the leadership of Griffith. This is typical when it comes to apostles, but we know that Ganishka doesn't follow this rule. When Guts and Kor aim to leave Vertanis by leaving on ship, Daka advances into the city, killing a lot of soldiers. On the other hand, Guts slices through a lot of them too, making the scene resemble a battlefield. But things get even more tense as Makara, along with plenty of Daka and Pishaka, emerge. Guts manages to take out the Makara. The group now decides that they must press towards the harbour while defending their backs if they are to reach Roderick's ship before it is inevitably burnt. But the Kushan are unrelenting, but so is Guts and Shirka, who manage to wipe out a lot of the Kushan force. But then several Makara burst from the water. Guts lets the Beast of Darkness take the steering wheel. He is of course successful. Deba comes into the picture and he is impressed with Guts' skill. The two then battle it out, Guts having aid from the rest of his party, and they manage to defeat Deba. He then receives a telepathic message from his superior, Ganishka, who is most displeased with him. Fog flows upward and it forms into Ganishka's face, making the sight both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The Emperor just starts laying into Deba, telling him he used up a lot of the resources attempting to kill Guts. He then electrocutes Deba, telling him to fall back. The Emperor then compliments Guts and Serpico on their skill. He then asks if they are allied with the Hawk, which stuns Guts because he thought Ganishka was the one allied with Griffith. Ganishka simply assumes that Guts and Serpico are allied with Griffith and shoots a powerful lightning blast directly at them, which hits Guts a couple of times. Ganishka remarks on the fact that Guts has withstood his life-ending attacks. Guts manages to block the third strike of lightning with Dragon Slayer. Yet again, Ganishka is surprised at the Black Swordsman's resilience. He has to be the Hawk's captain, he announces. Guts is offended by the presumption and voices that out. Ganishka then notices the brand of sacrifice engraved on Guts' neck, and realizes that Guts has survived being sacrificed to the God Hand. Using this new evidence, he has a proposal for Guts to become a follower of the Emperor. Nearly every apostle in the world is currently allied with Griffith, which would give Guts the chance to get his revenge. Ganishka attempts to convince Guts even more by declaring that he opposes the God Hand, which he indeed does. And Guts, you should take this proposal because it's a good chance to defeat Griffith. And plus, Ganishka is an apostle and can be killed just like any other. So use him to get your revenge and just take him out afterwards because he will be much easier to eliminate than Griffith. Gus decides to say no. Ganishka accepts Guts' decision and says that he must kill Guts' group in exchange for Guts having killed so many of his force. He sends out a mental signal over Vritannis, ordering all of his Daka to return to the harbour. However, the Band of the Hawk has arrived to Vritannis and is destroying Ganishka's force. In fact, apostles are charging directly towards Ganishka. Seeing this, he unleashes a giant lightning burst, killing a decent number of them. The roar of Zod is heard by the Emperor along with Guts and his party. He is perched upon a tall tower staring directly at Ganishka. The beast then leaps straight to Ganishka and suffers lightning bolt shocks. He manages to overcome the pain and he makes an attempt to hurt Ganishka. Eventually, Zod's attacks scatter Ganishka's fog body enough to inspire the other apostles to continue attacking, though many of them are still killed by bolts of lightning. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where we get one of the best moments in the manga, when Zod and Guts decide to put their differences aside and take down the Emperor. Guts holds his sword out in front of him, and Zod charges directly into Ganishka, and we get probably one of the coolest panels of all time. Look at this, just look at it, look at it. The attack is actually successful as the fog disappears and Ganishka can feel the pain on his real body as he sits in Windham. Fast forwarding a little bit, outside the city walls of Vritannis, armies serving under the Holy See have formed up, and over nearby hills, Kushan flags are visible, and in this panel we see the huge size of this force. Ganishka is also present, and he thinks about how the odds are in his favour. He orders the armies to be purged. The Kushan are fierce and powerful, dominating the battlefield, wiping out a lot of the Holy See soldiers. Many think that this is the end of the Holy See, but just then, a new party has arrived. Of course, who else would it be? Stupid! Griffith and his band charge into the Kushan flank. The Kushan are so large that this sudden shift in the battle discombobulates them. But Griffith has his eyes set on one person, Ganishka, and he charges to his location in the speed of light, while a band of the Hawks surround the mobile palace. Griffith arrives and is finally face to face with the Emperor. The two beings with god complexes are finally in the presence of each other. Griffith lifts his visor and we see his calm and collected face. On the other side, Ganishka is having some trouble. It seems that he is trembling in the presence of the Hawk. He notices it and he is frightened by it, considering he thinks of himself as the ruler of the greatest empire in the world. When Griffith speaks, he is comforted by the voice. He is feeling a mixture of fear and wonder in the presence of Griffith. No doubt from the nature that Ganishka is an apostle and Griffith is of the God Hand. He is naturally inferior to the Hawk. The sensation is maddening to Ganishka. Fog starts materializing from his mouth. Griffith is like, "Calm down, boy," and is about to place his hand upon Ganishka, who realizes that if he lets the Hawk lay a finger on him, it's game over. He transforms into his giant cloud-like form once again. Ganishka then shouts the same words he usually does, declaring that he is the big boy, and not even one of the God Hand can stop him. Griffith, of course, is not threatened by this. He mentions that he smells the salt of the sea. Immediately after this is said, a strong wind flows over the battlefield, and Ganishka, who is made of fog, is forced back into his human form in the blink of an eye. He is brought to his knees, and when he looks up, he finds that he is kneeling directly before Griffith. Ganishka cannot decipher whether the wind was summoned by Griffith or whether it was a simple coincidence. Griffith suggests that Ganishka order his army to withdraw. According to Griffith, they have arrived at a stalemate, so he suggests that they should reschedule their battle, even letting Ganishka choose where their battle will be, and the Dread Emperor agrees to this. Some time passes and we return to Windham, where the Emperor is rushing to a lower chamber of a temple, and Deba is pleading with Ganishka to stop whatever he's doing. But he is having none of it, saying that this is the only way. He feels humiliated by the encounter he had with Griffith. He acknowledges his apostle instincts to obey Griffith. No apostle can hurt the hawk, he concludes. We then see he has made his way to that weird mass of flesh that we saw earlier, where demons were being born from pregnant women. Ganishka tells us what his intentions are. He needs to transcend apostlehhood. That's how he will defeat Griffith. He is then lowered into the mass of flesh. Fog begins pouring out from the temple into the city, disintegrating any being it touches. One of the few survivors is Deba, who keeps the fog at bay using magic. The mass of flesh suddenly begins sucking the fog in. Deba realizes that the machine is really absorbing the life force from all the people killed by the fog. He likens the machine to a Baelit. Ganishka is undergoing another ritual to become an apostle once more, but one far more sinister. In Windham, the place is vacant. We see Deba stumble out of the temple, and his face is one that has just experienced something horrific. He looks back to the doors of the temple and sees a dark mass that resembles Ganishka's likeness. It appears to keep growing in size.
I obtained it.
Deba observes, the great emperor has now become hell itself. It's overflowing. Hell is overflowing. The destruction is so severe that anyone around Windham notices it, but suddenly everything becomes dark and everyone's gaze slowly moves up. Watching from the distant hills outside Windham, the entire band of the Hawk, Laban and his Arklow Knights, the Resistance Force and everyone else watch the horrors unfold. Everybody present except Griffith is rendered speechless by what they see. And what they see is almost indescribable. A tall looking pillar that reaches beyond the clouds with many tentacle-like arms coming out from it. This is Ganishka's Shiva form, the god of destruction. Here we are given some of the most grand and spectacularly detailed art from Kentaro Miura. I couldn't imagine how long this would take, but just by looking at these images, I can easily immerse myself in the story and feel what it would be like to see this horror with my own eyes. This whole section with Ganishka and Griffith is a phenomenal spectacle, rivaling some of the best parts of the Golden Age arc for me. The Dread Emperor has finally got what he wanted. He is impossibly tall. The Kushan below him stop bowing, but all he can make out is that they look like insects. And of course, when he moves, he crushes a lot of people down below, but he doesn't care, because what is the point of them now? Despite being incredibly terrified at this sight, people are putting their hope into the Hawk of Light to save them. Ganishka marches slowly towards Griffith, killing anyone in his path. He is so enormous that you can see him from miles away. Deba, riding the Garuda, pleads with Ganishka to stop killing his own men. But to Ganishka, Deba is just a buzzing bug. He breathes fireballs from his mouth to get rid of Deba and kill many more people on the ground. Ganishka is not aware of the consequence of this immense power. He looks around in search of Deba and his army, completely unaware that he's nearly annihilated everything around him. Also, he does not remember his own identity. A terrifying revelation. Thus, Ganishka continues his destructive rampage, but in the darkness, his eyes fix on a light. It's Griffith on a horse with two big white wings. Ganishka remembers his goal. Down below, these weird tentacle monsters bearing the resemblance of Ganishka begin manifesting and devouring any soldier in sight, like a sort of infection. On the hilltop, Griffith commands the war demons to move forward to protect the rest of the band. Carnage erupts between these Ganishka spawn and the war demons. Eventually, with a lot of perseverance, Griffith and his army get the upper hand and begin charging towards the remaining monsters. But Ganishka himself has arrived on the scene, where he does a great big stomp, killing many, but not Griffith, who is standing on the back of Zod. They begin ascending to a particular part of Ganishka, and Griffith lands on the top of the giant demon's head. Here we are finally given the Demon Emperor's backstory, where his greed for power is made clear. As a child, Ganishka had a younger brother, whom his mother clearly favoured, wishing for the younger brother to be heir to the Kushan throne. And being the amazing mother that she is, she poisons Ganishka.
What the f is wrong with you?
But he ends up surviving it. Because of this, Ganishka ends up murdering his own brother in revenge. This makes the mother self-delete. Growing up, many in the political sphere plotted to kill Prince Ganishka, but in the end he managed to survive the Den of Vipers, probably by killing them as this image indicates. When he meets his father, the Kushan Emperor, Ganishka notices the fear and suspicion in his father's eyes by his presence. Later, during a royal visit, the Emperor's elephant is hit by a poisoned dart and throws him to his death. An assassination orchestrated by Ganishka and executed by another accomplice. Ganishka then ties up his loose ends. Following his father's death, Ganishka becomes the Kushan Emperor, but faces constant threats from political rivals. To strengthen his rule, he instills fear by waging wars and dominating other nations. Though he marries and has a child, his continuous military campaigns keep him away from his family, whom he secretly fears in a similar fashion to his father's feelings towards him. Years of war and his desire to rule the entire world culminate in a feast held in his honor, where he is poisoned. His guards turn against him, revealing his son as the mastermind behind the plot. Despite being repeatedly stabbed, Ganishka survives long enough to reach an oddly shaped stone. Of course, it's a Bailet. He chooses to sacrifice his son, ascending to apostlehood. But in the present, Ganishka sees nothing but darkness, and suddenly a light appears before him. It's the blinding, burning light of the hawk. Ganishka closes his eyes, ready to be enveloped by it. Just then, Skull Knight appears from a portal and slashes at Femto's back with his sword. Zod is like,
No, not my daddy.
but it appears that this attack was ineffective against Femto. In fact, he wanted this to happen. Skull Knight had just distorted space with his sword. Femto places the spatial tear upon Ganishka's face, causing the apostle to split in two. The combined effect of Ganishka's twice reincarnated form and the power of the Sword of Baelitz opens a portal to the deepest layers of the astral world. Ganishka dies, giving way to the new world, Fantasia. The tale of Ganishka ends here. Ganishka's undoing was done by his own arrogance and his refusal to submit to the God Hand's design, actively playing against them by reincarnating himself. It's a classic story of one who is so greedy that they cause their own demise. In the pursuit of attaining great power, Ganishka did things that the everyday person would struggle to do. He wanted to create an army of demonic beings that surpassed the power of an ordinary soldier. And the Emperor isn't bothered by the fact that, to do this, pregnant women are taken and put in a process of birthing a demon which results in excruciating death. And we have seen copious amounts of Daka under the rule of Ganishka, meaning this process was occurring on a grand scale. But if the purpose of creating these demon babies is to assist in the effort of him gaining more power, then that's a road the Emperor is willing to take. Because nothing matters more than his desires. His ego matches the size of his empire, and empathy is non-existent in his character. How many people have suffered under his tyrannical rule? We do not know. But we can assume just by the title of Emperor, it's a lot. And if there's something we can hypothesize, it's that the stronger the ambition a being has, the more powerful the apostle they will be. And from his backstory, just by the nature of being born into a family that has the throne, he is naturally ambitious. Add on the fact he had a brother who was favoured, and yeah, you've got someone who wants to prove something to the world. To be a long-reigning emperor, you must have strong allies. But once Ganishka transforms into his Shiva form, that idea becomes irrelevant. He crushes everyone down below as if they are just ants in the sand. And when puddles of blood become visible to Ganishka, he remarks how it looks like blooming flowers. It's this polarization between this impossibly giant figure and the people down below that is terrifying. They seem so removed from each other that it does, in the perspective of Ganishka, feels like he's just stamped on a bunch of ants and not hundreds of actual people. You actually root for Deba when he is pleading with his superior to stop the rampage. And because allies are not important to the Emperor, he views Deba as an annoying insect buzzing by his ear, and he nearly kills him. In regards to his proposition he gives to Guts to form an alliance, it is yet again just another tactic in hopes of defeating Griffith. Maybe in his ideal world where Griffith is defeated, he would either kill Guts or reward him for his help. Whatever the case may be, he will make sure everyone knows who is in charge. And just by the sheer magnitude of Ganishka's tyranny and destruction, he is a contender for the #1 spot for the most evil being in Berserk. Arguably more than Griffith. We only think Griffith is more evil because it is more personal when it comes to him. And next, we should talk about the relationship between these two powerhouses. The entire section of the story where Griffith and Ganishka are at war with each other is easily one of the most hype moments in the whole manga, and one of the most pivotal turning points in the story. The art is off the chain, and the scale and the whole spectacle is just incredible. It's always got you questioning what's going to happen next. We see Griffith don the femto persona once more, which I'm glad because we don't see that as often as I would like in the story. And you have the crazy twist of the new world Fantasia being born. I remember feeling conflicted on who I was rooting for out of these two. I was all behind the Ganishka and Guts potential team up. I remember when I was reading Ganishka's proposition, I was like, this is it. This is how Guts is going to have a chance against Griffith. But of course, they're our good guys and they can't strike a deal with the evil ones in the story. But between Ganishka and Griffith, I obviously like Griffith's character more, but I did want him to face a challenge. Before rereading this section, I remembered this section differently. I recalled Griffith having a hard time with Ganishka, but when I went through it again, Griffith kind of just destroyed him. As Griffith is part of the God Hand, and while Ganishka could probably endure for a long time, he would just never be able to harm Griffith in the slightest. The power scale kind of goes like this. I'm going to give you the car analogy again. Normal humans are like everyday normal cars. Apostles are like supercars. Some of them are slower and faster than each other. Ganishka, when transformed, is the fastest car on the planet. The God Hand are blackbirds. There really isn't any competition. It's made clear that Griffith's power is untouchable. But I will say it's not made entirely clear whether Femto killed Ganishka. It was very likely the sword strike from Skull Knight that ended Ganishka. This leads me to ask, if Skull Knight were not here, how would Femto have killed the Emperor? And I know what you're saying, but it was fated for this to happen. Skull Knight was supposed to show up, and Griffith is part of the God Hand. He probably just used Skull Knight to create this new world. After all, we do not know the full extent of Griffith's powers, but we can assume he has some control over future events. Anyways, my reasoning for saying all this boils down to, I just want this bitch to lose for once. Emperor Ganishka could likely destroy any apostle who might dare to stand in his way. I don't think anyone could argue that he wouldn't be king of the apostles had the God Hand not existed. But when the prophesied savior Griffith, who just so happens to be part of the God Hand, comes to Ganishka, the Dread Emperor's power is inadequate. Griffith is outstandingly powerful, and when Ganishka's powers fail against the demon, it disturbs the Emperor so much it drives him to lower himself into the man-made Bailet, turning him into the Shiva form, the gargantuan hair-raising image. In this form he gets everything he wants, but he doesn't account for the ramifications of obtaining this ultra power. He doesn't even realize how many people he is wiping out. His head is literally in the clouds, and all he can see is nothing but darkness. He is like nothing else in the world. I imagine this is quite an isolating position to be in. Ganishka in this moment struggles with his identity, for there is little of what resembles humanity within him. Ganishka was an obstacle for Griffith, more politically than in terms of power, but Griffith manages to turn this obstacle into a tool to make him ascend further in his goals. In his final moments, Griffith uses Ganishka as the catalyst for reshaping the world. As his body unravels, he sees Griffith as a divine being of light, experiencing awe in his final moments, despite having hated Griffith. Unbeknownst to Ganishka, his decision to transform into his Shiva form mistakenly aids Griffith with the creation of Fantasia. He is just another pebble in the road for the Hawk, another device to further Griffith's ascension. You see, this perception the Dread Emperor has as being ultra powerful is not entirely accurate. When his end is near, we see the fear that Ganishka has had for his entire life, and it is a great factor in his pursuit of absolute control. The amount of strength he holds, the vast amount of land he has conquered, is equal to the fear he possesses. He likely has some form of a superiority complex. So what we will talk about now is his backstory and what created the monster that is Ganishka. We learn the backstory of the Demon Emperor right before his death. This is a common storytelling device that is used in other works other than Berserk, though Berserk does have this a few times. And usually I'm not a huge fan of it, as it feels like it's overdone a little bit. It also feels like a cheap tactic to get us to feel sympathy for the evil villain. With my count video, I explained how this can often taint people's judgment of the character when the last moments of an evil character is meant to be sympathetic. But with Ganishka, I like it for how visually unique it is, and it gives us some moral complexity to the pretty morally dark Emperor, while also giving us some clarity on the purpose of his ambition. Now, in his backstory, the first detail we get is that his mother favoured his brother over him. But worse than that, she tried to poison her own son. I feel like this detail on its own is responsible enough for Ganishka to be the man he becomes. It's well documented that children are more receptive to trauma because of their developing brains and limited experience, which makes them unable to understand and cope with tragedies. It's quite a common thing to hear a sibling express that they didn't feel as loved as their other sibling. Because the brain of a child is fragile, this can be something as simple as one sibling seeing the other get more repeated attention at a young age. These people can grow up to be happy and healthy overall, but they will likely hold some resentment. In the case of Ganishka, his mother, the very thing that is supposed to conditionally love you, ended up poisoning him, and this is obviously catastrophic to the child's development. Ganishka is made a monster right from the get-go. He, of course, kills his brother out for revenge and kills his own father for the throne. But the great tragedy of a lot of trauma is that it tends to be a cycle. Ganishka had a son, and just like his father, he feared his son. This culminates in a situation that is almost identical to his own past with his father. The cycle continues. When we look at Ganishka when he is the Kushan Emperor, hell-bent on being at the top, we see a man who was never truly loved, and thus is incapable of giving love. Power is all he has learned, and he is good at it. I mentioned he probably has some sort of superiority complex. Most of his dialogue typically expresses how superior he thinks he is, listing off his achievements of being the Kushan Emperor. And of course, he thinks himself above God. It's an inflated ego for sure. And I've seen this type of behavior in villains countless times. I do not require a backstory to understand that he is likely profoundly insecure. However, we are indeed presented with his backstory, which reveals that he was unfavored by his mother, and his father harbored a fear of his own son. Additionally, the betrayal from his son, which mirrors his own betrayal to his father, contributes to the development of a character who feels inferior. Consequently, Ganishka becomes an individual who feels compelled to demonstrate his strength to the world. He cannot allow anyone to perceive his vulnerabilities. Instead, he desires for people to admire him and acknowledge his greatness. You will notice that his backstory is visually distinctive, characterized by an overwhelming pitch blackness. Such a portrayal is rare within the context of Berserk. The absence of the color white could symbolize that his backstory is filled solely with darkness, devoid of any joyful moments. His experiences are solely marked by suffering, death, and cruelty. As he reflects on his past in the present day, he comes to the realization that his life has been shrouded in darkness. It is at this moment that he finally perceives the light, presenting a breathtaking vision for someone who has only known the color black. So that was Emperor Ganishka, the man who aspired to be above the heavens, but ultimately fell short. He is definitely one of my favourite villains in the story. Beneath Griffith, he poses the most threat. Also, is it just me or does anyone else find his name satisfying? Ganishka.
We do not care.
One thing that I noticed is that there appears to be some Indian/South Asian influence, not just by the design of the Kushan people and the architecture, but the name Kushan itself. One Wikipedia search and yeah, I guess Kentaro wasn't being subtle. The Kushan Empire was a diverse empire. It expanded to include a large part of what is today Afghanistan, Eastern Iran, India, Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. In India, the Kushan territory extended to such places as Saketa and Sarnath. Inscriptions from the time of the Kushan Emperor Ganishka the Great have been discovered in these areas. Okay, come on. Ganishka? Come on. So yeah, the Kushan are very South Asian influenced. I mean, just look at the armor style of the Rajputs. Looks very similar. Anyways, you can go deeper into the similarities between Hindu culture and the Kushan and Berserk, but I think you can understand where Miura got his inspiration from. So if there's something you can learn from Ganishka's story, then it would be to make sure you're raising your children right, because if you don't, they might just turn into a power-hungry warlord declaring war on the whole world. So yeah, don't stress about it.